everybody. I'm Lauren, furniture flipping teacher. I'm here with Rust-Oleum at the Habitat for Humanity Restore, and we are going to go in and see what furniture we can find. And also I'm going to be sharing a lot of tips and tricks for how you can find the perfect furniture. Let's go in. So first things first, you want to locate the furniture section in the thrift store, and lucky for us, it's right here in the front of the store. So like I said, I'm going to be taking you through some tips and tricks on what I like to look for if I'm looking for a piece of furniture that has potential but maybe needs a little love. Whether you are looking to put furniture in your home or flip it for a profit, these tips are going to be perfect for you. It looks like they have the smaller furniture up front here. So some of the main things that I want to look for is the shape that the furniture is in. I want to make sure that I'm not getting myself in too deep with a project that needs way too many repairs. But I'm also going to talk about how you can identify if pieces are wood or veneer or other materials, and then how you might tackle that when you're actually flipping the piece of furniture. So you can see there's a lot of different styles of end tables, some with glass, some with veneer, some with wood, and it really just depends on what you are looking for. So for this piece right here, a good indicator that this would be a solid piece is that it doesn't need very many repairs, but it is a little bit outdated. And so this is a perfect contender for a piece of furniture to flip because you can still make it your own. So down here on this piece of furniture, there's it's a glossy surface, and then there's a lot of wood grain going a lot of different directions. And this is one of the easiest ways to tell that this is actually a veneer versus a solid wood. If you think about it, wood doesn't grow in patterns like this. So this is a manufactured veneer on the bottom here. And I'm not saying that you want to not take this piece, but it's just good to keep in mind what things are made of, so that when you are actually doing your project, you will know how to address certain types of material on your pieces of furniture. Another key factor that you want to make sure when you are looking at furniture that you scope out is the structure of the piece. So like this piece, if I just wobble it a little bit, like it is probably gonna collapse here soon. So if you love this piece and you think that you have the skills to repair it, you wanna just look and examine it a bit more. This is a old antique piece, and I can just tell that it is solid wood and just the curves and the overall look of it. But I would go underneath and I would just assess and see if I can add some screws or something that would be able to reinforce that. Basically, you just want to make sure that you're not going to get a piece home and then not be able to repair it. So before you even step foot into a thrift store, chances are you are going to have a little bit of what you are looking for in mind. And generally they have it sectioned out to where like this is the end table section and then the tables and the dressers. So you're going to want to find your section. Over here, they have the kitchen table section. Kitchen tables are great pieces that can be thrifted because they typically have a second life in them. They maybe just need a little bit of love. So something like this piece of furniture, right, is perfect for a flip. Maybe it is not the ideal look that you want. Like typically this yellowish wood isn't the most eye-catching and trendy, but you can definitely use some different products to sand the finish down and change up what the base looks like, give it a little bit of a restain, and then it'll be good as new and ready to fit into your own home. We're gonna come over to the dresser section, which is probably my favorite section. And I did grab my tape measure because one thing that you always want to make sure that you remember is that you have your tape measure with you and you have measured your space that you're going to be putting this piece in. But not only the space it's going in, also the route to get it to that space, like your doorways, your curves and turns throughout your house. So you just want to make sure that it all is going to fit, and then also fit in your vehicle, or are you going to need to get a supplemental vehicle or borrow one from a friend? So something that I always look for with dressers is the name brand. I think that name branded furniture just is going to be a little bit more structurally sound and able to live a longer life, even after you've flipped it. So I always look in the top left drawer, but sometimes it may not be there because the drawers maybe gotten shuffled around. But typically the top left drawer is where the brand is going to be labeled. In specifically Dixie dressers, which this one is, it's going to be on the right side. So that is a good indicator that you have a pretty solid piece of furniture. Now this one, it has potential, but it is, the lines and the curves of it is a little bit outdated. I particularly wouldn't pick up this piece, but there is quite a bit of storage. You always want to make sure that your pieces work functionally before you take them home, especially if you are a beginner. You may not have the skills just yet to assess all of that damage. Things like drawers, making sure that they pull in and out very nicely. I always make sure to test out every single drawer on the pieces of furniture. Coming down here a little bit, I just saw a little bit of some older pieces of furniture. A lot of the times you can just identify the older pieces by what the finish looks like, running your hands across the surfaces. This is a very rough surface, so I can tell it's been through the years. And with these, the drawers are often going to be a little bit trickier to open, and they may just need some furniture salve to butter up and make them come out without squeaking a little bit better. But again, always testing the drawers. All right. This one actually is a matching piece to this piece over here, which is kind of cool. So if you're ever looking for like a set of furniture, that's another great thing that you can look for at thrift stores. Something that I would recommend avoiding is previously painted pieces of furniture, because this is going to take a bit longer for you to get ready to be in the flippable state. You can see that there's a lot of paint stroke marks and it's very dirty, bumpy. They've even painted right over the hardware without removing it. That's a big no-no. Always remove your hardware. So on this type of dresser, even though it's only $45, unless you're up for a really big project, I would tend to avoid a painted piece like this. It would be quite a transformation, but maybe not the best project for a beginner. So for this dresser right here, I'm going to just be opening some of the drawers. You can tell that it's been previously flipped, and this is painted, but it's not such a bad job like the other one to where it wouldn't be a project that you might want to tackle. And when I'm opening the drawers, I'm not only making sure that they work really well, I'm also assessing how it's made. So right here, this is a dovetail joint. That's where the side of the drawer comes together with the front of the drawer, and it's joined with what's called dovetailing right here. And that's just an indicator that is a very structurally sound piece of furniture. And then, like I told you before, we can come over to the left side and check. Generally, if it's dovetailed, it's going to have a maker's mark. This is from Huntley, and so that is a more well-known piece or manufacturer of furniture. Something that I do want to point out with this piece is that it's pretty low to the ground, but don't let that deter you from getting it, because just because it's low to the ground doesn't mean it has to stay that way. You can always elevate your pieces by making a base or adding on legs to kind of make it a little bit higher. A lot of the times older vintage pieces like this are lower to the ground, and so we need to elevate them a bit to make them fit better into the modern homes. This one's a little bit taller, but as we assess it, we can tell that there are no dovetails here. That's not a bad thing, it just means that it might not be quite as structurally sound as, say, something like this. Now, when I'm looking for pieces of furniture, I'm also just wanting to make sure that I know what type of project I'm getting into. And so that's when I'm assessing what it's made out of. Now, this looks to me like it is a pine dresser, and a lot of the times you can tell that it's pine from these larger knots. So this one has quite a few larger knots in the top. So the top is pine, and I think the rest of it is pine as well. But sometimes pieces of or manufacturers try to trick you a little bit, because with veneer, basically what's happening is there's a very thin piece of wood that is covering a maybe cheaper material underneath, something like particle board or something like MDF or press board, chipboard is also called. And you can generally tell from looking at this back. But like I said, sometimes they like to trick you. And this, in this instance specifically, this is a veneer, but you can't really tell that it's a veneer by looking at the back of the piece of furniture, because they've kind of wrapped the veneer all the way around to cover the backing. I'm going to show you a piece that is not like that, but that you can actually visibly see the layer of veneer there. So right here, this is a piece that is veneer. It's very glossy, so that's one indicator that it's a veneer. But then also, like I said, if we pull it out and look at the back of the piece, you can tell that there's this super thin layer of wood up here, and then the rest of it is that like press board or chipboard or MDF. Generally, they're made of one of those lower quality materials, but they cover it with the veneer to just make it look a little bit more upscale. So just because the top might have veneer doesn't necessarily mean that the entire piece has veneer. So in this case, these drawer fronts are actually solid wood. They're solid pine. So they've used a pine veneer up here and then a solid pine here. And you can tell because the same pattern, the direction of the wood grain is actually happening on the inside as well. So typically with drawer fronts, they may be using the solid wood piece because it's not as big and large of a surface area that they're covering. And plus, pine is a little bit of a cheaper material, so they can kind of get away with doing a mix of both. Something else that I wanted to point out is damages, and something that you will often see at thrift stores is pieces that have water damage or just simply failing finishes. But don't let that scare you away, because these things can be fixed and it may not be as hard as you may have imagined. So something like this, where the water damage has completely taken off the finish of the piece, all you have to do is sand down the remainder of the finish, being careful not to damage the veneer, and I'll show you that a little later. But you can tell that this one is veneer based on looking at the back like we just talked about. But then you would sand this down and then just refinish it by staining it and putting a top coat on it. Or maybe the piece has a potential for paint instead. Something like this, where it's all scratched up and definitely needs some love. The same thing you can do is make sure that you sand it down, get all of the bumps and lumps off and smoothed out. And whether you're going to paint it or stain it, just make sure that it's very nice and smooth. But again, don't be scared away from the fact that the finish is failing or that there are marks on it. There's also different products that you can utilize that can take out these white marks or water marks or even burn marks. One of the last sections of the thrift store is typically going to be like the seating section. So you're going to have a lot of upholstered items like couches, chairs, but then there's also a lot of single chairs. But if you have the good eye, you can typically find good chairs that have good bones, but maybe just need a little bit of an update. Something like these chairs right here, they're in great shape. They are sturdy, they're sound, but the look is just not really doing it. So you got to look past that, what they currently look like, and then really see the potential. So you could easily take the seat off, reupholster the seat by just putting a new fabric on and stapling it in, and then spray painting the remainder of the chair, and then reattaching the upholstered seat. It's great if you can find sets of them, especially 4, 5, and 6 piece sets, because those are perfect to go around like a dining table or a kitchen table, something like that. So never look past this spot if you are looking for chairs. This is a great spot to get chairs on the cheap, but then be able to upgrade them, upcycle them to make them fit into your own home. So now that I've browsed the entire store, I have chosen 2 pieces that I am going to snag and take back to the Rust-Oleum Garage. The first one is this pine broyhill dresser. Remember, the top is veneer and the drawer fronts are solid wood, so we've got a really great blank slate here, and I'm excited to tackle this one. The other one that I chose is more toward the front, and it is this solid wood table and free chairs. We had to take the chairs even though I just wanted the table, but that's okay. We can do something with the chairs as well. So that one was $60 for this set, and the other one was, I believe, 45. I can't remember now. So we're gonna go ahead and get all of these loaded up in our van and meet back at the Rust-Oleum Garage.